Chulho once believed academic success and networking guaranteed a stable career. The reality of a hyper-competitive job market quickly shattered those illusions. Constant rejections piled up, rendering his efforts seemingly worthless. His status as an unemployed graduate became an unbearable psychological burden. Suddenly, he was thrust into a scene of unimaginable carnage. The sensory overload of actual combat paralyzed his decision-making. Heavy artillery fire confirmed the lethal stakes of this new environment. The sudden transition from civilian life to war defied logic. A flesh wound on his cheek grounded him in the physical pain of survival. His commander demanded immediate focus despite the surrounding slaughter. Confusion and panic nearly cost him his life in the opening minutes. A violent strike forced him to acknowledge his lack of combat readiness. The commander's fury was as dangerous as the enemy's arrows. Chulho could only stammer apologies while the battle raged around him. He gazed at a medieval siege, wondering how he had arrived here. Flashback to reality, he stood in a doorway facing domestic ruin. The living room was a wreckage of broken dreams and physical furniture. His greeting was met with the heavy, suffocating silence of his father. His father sat alone, consumed by the failure of his son's prospects. A cold welcome confirmed that the family dynamic was irreversibly damaged. The command to clean the mess was the only communication offered. Chulho accepted the task as a small penance for his unemployment. Cleaning up broken pottery mirrored his efforts to mend his life. He realized his father's rage stemmed from the neighbors' financial success. The intensity of the anger was unprecedented in their household history. His sister cowered in the corner, traumatized by the ongoing strife. She reminded him of the social humiliation the family was enduring. Chulho was startled by her presence, having been lost in his own frustration. He lashed out at her, a sign of his own crumbling composure. She explained that neighbors had visited, flaunting their superior wealth. The news of the neighbors' arrogance pushed Chulho toward a breaking point. He resolved to fix the situation before things grew any worse. Watching his sister clean made his own failure feel even more acute. He retreated to his room to continue his desperate search for income. His sister's reminder of their poverty served as a sharp motivation. He claimed he would focus solely on finding new employment opportunities. Resentment toward the neighbor fueled his frantic search for a way out. He forced himself to stop thinking of his rivals and focus on his own path. He began scavenging for any lead that could provide immediate financial relief. A specific job portal appeared, promising a perfect fit for his situation. He began entering his details, his movements driven by sheer desperation. He compared his lack of earnings to high schoolers, feeling utterly defeated. Most listings were for grueling manual labor that offered no future. Every day of unemployment felt like another failure added to the tally. He checked his phone, hoping for a missed call that never came. He noticed a job coupon from recruiters he met the previous day. He questioned if it was spam, but decided to explore the link anyway. The site claimed to offer advice for the truly desperate job seeker. The sinister nature of the portal didn't deter him in his current state. He engaged with a prompt that asked if he would trade his soul for a job. He clicked accept, officially registering for the mysterious service. The survey asked about his tolerance for long-term immersive tasks. He was asked how he would manage a sudden, massive influx of capital. Chulho chose the option that prioritized stability and calculated growth. The process of self-analysis provided a strange, brief sense of enjoyment. The final question challenged him to define his own existential value. He affirmed his life had value, hoping the system would agree. The application began processing, displaying a steady progress bar. He felt a sense of accomplishment for finally completing something. The system confirmed his application was successful and ready for deployment. A blinding light erupted, initiating his transportation to another world. He awoke to the screams of the battlefield, realizing the contract had begun. Chulho Kang suddenly awakens on a chaotic battlefield, remembering only his recent job applications. Surrounded by the sounds of slaughter, he questions if he has fallen into an incredibly realistic dream. He is suddenly overwhelmed by memories that do not belong to him, realizing he is seeing another man's life. He learns he is now Parsons, a man fighting to support a bedridden mother and a younger sister. The weight of Parsons' responsibilities solidifies his resolve to survive the coming assault at any cost. Despite the sensory overload, his mind continues to reel from the impossibility of the situation. A commanding officer screams at him to wake up, threatening to kill him personally if he remains frozen. Recognizing the immediate danger, he suppresses his true identity to fully inhabit the role of Parsons. The sheer brutality of the casualties around him makes the dream theory harder to maintain. He decides to focus solely on survival, deferring questions about his reality until the battle is won. A sudden volley of arrows decimates the front line, forcing the mercenaries to take cover. The unit moves inside a massive siege tower, designed to breach the fortress's formidable walls. Huddled together, the men brace themselves as the wooden structure groans under enemy bombardment. Parsons realizes they are moments away from engaging in a direct vertical assault. A veteran sergeant notices his hesitation and demands to know if it is his first time in a real corps. Accessing the original memories, he confirms the man is a senior officer he is expected to obey. The sergeant orders him to swallow his fear and move instantly once the ladder is in place. He explains that their mercenary group is the tip of the spear for this entire invasion. Their specific mission is to scale the stronghold and open the gates from the interior. Only after they succeed will the primary force of knights be able to secure the city. Parsons realizes his only chance of returning to his family is completing this high-risk task. The tower finally reaches the wall, and the command to charge is given amidst a deafening roar. The sergeant bellows at the men, questioning their desire to live to drive them forward. The mercenaries respond with a unified shout, throwing themselves into the breach. He warns that any man who retreats will be met with a rain of arrows from their own side. The climb begins, and Parsons ascends the tower ladders toward the killing zone above. The mechanical nature of the advance reminds him of a hyper-realistic war simulation. A sudden blur of motion narrowly misses his head, snapping his focus back to the present. An arrow grazes his cheek, and the physical sting of the wound shatters his remaining doubts. He realizes that if he dies in this world, there is a very real chance he will die forever. The siege bridge drops onto the ramparts, and the first wave of mercenaries rushes out. The defenders meet them with steel, and a bloody struggle for the wall begins. Soldiers are thrown from the height as the battle lines shift back and forth. Parsons faces his first opponent, desperately relying on the muscle memory of the original body. He strikes down a guard, horrified but driven by the primal need to stay alive. The carnage on the narrow walkway intensifies as both sides pour in reinforcements. A heavy blow shatters Parsons' spear, leaving him weaponless in the middle of a melee. A massive soldier in full plate armor looms over him, preparing a finishing strike. Realizing his own strength is insufficient, he charges low to use the knight's momentum against him. With a desperate tackle, he forces the armored man toward the edge of the rampart. The knight is knocked off balance and tumbles from the wall into the chaos below. The fall removes a key defender, momentarily shocking the other castle guards. The impact of the heavy armor kills several enemies on the ground, aiding the main assault. Defenders quickly recover and close in on Parsons, recognizing him as a priority target. He frantically searches the blood-soaked floor for anything he can use to defend himself. He grabs a heavy polearm from a fallen mercenary just as the enemy attacks. With a wide, sweeping strike, he carves a path through the defenders surrounding him. The guards are driven back by his unexpected ferocity and skill with the new weapon. He screams for his comrades to rally, sensing an opportunity to break the defense. The other mercenaries follow his lead, pouring onto the wall in a final, decisive surge. The castle's internal gate controls are finally reached, and the wall is secured. The sergeant praises Parsons, acknowledging the rookie's bravery in the heat of combat. With the gates open, the primary force of knights begins their unstoppable charge. The stronghold falls as the elite cavalry sweeps away the remaining resistance. Parsons stands among the piles of the dead, struggling to reconcile his new reality with his past life. Exhausted and trembling, he realizes that for better or worse, he has truly survived. He accepts that until he finds a way home, he must remain Parsons to ensure his continued survival. The battle reaches its conclusion as the Aldros army breaches the inner sanctum to claim their spoils. Local defenders cry out in defiance, realizing their home has been completely overrun. The resistance is swiftly and violently silenced by the invading force. Mercenaries hunt down the remaining survivors, ensuring no one escapes the fallen castle. One of the surviving soldiers celebrates, eager to feast on the riches left behind. The final reports indicate that only a fraction of the original mercenary corps survived the initial assault. Commander Aldrose appears to congratulate his men on their brutal efficiency. He declares a complete victory over the threat posed by the wicked Dorian. The commander publicly acknowledges that the victory was only possible because of the mercenaries on the front lines. Aldrose promises to uphold the financial agreement made with the surviving soldiers. Chulho observes the celebration with a grim perspective, noting that most of his comrades are dead. For the survivors, the trauma of the slaughter is overshadowed by the relief of staying alive. The sergeant orders the remaining men to fall in for a final inspection. Chulho's instincts from his mandatory military service in Korea immediately take over. He snaps to attention with a precision that far exceeds the other mercenaries. He quickly realizes that his perfect form is making him stand out in a dangerous way. 2 years of grueling drills have been ingrained into his muscle memory, making it impossible to hide. Commander Aldrose is immediately drawn to the young soldier's exceptional discipline. Chulho regrets being noticed, as staying invisible was his best chance for survival. The sergeant orders him to the front of the line to face the commander directly. Chulho identifies himself as Parsons, trying to maintain the role he was given in this world. The commander praises his achievements, noting that such performance is rare for a first battle. Chulho realizes that being favored by a noble is rarely a positive outcome for a commoner. He knows that exceptional soldiers are often treated as disposable tools on future battlefields. Aldrose reveals that a position among his squires has opened up. He officially offers Chulho the chance to become his personal squire. Chulho understands that this promotion is actually a role as a high-level servant. He attempts to decline by claiming his commoner status makes him unworthy. He explains his humble background as a farmer to lower the noble's expectations. He frames the refusal as an act of respect, suggesting the position would be wasted on him. Aldrose is even more impressed by Chulho's eloquence and manners. Chulho realizes his attempt at humble refusal has backfired completely. He immediately pivots to a cruder persona, asking for coins to line his pockets instead. The sudden display of greed catches the noble and the sergeant off guard. Aldrose's opinion of him drops instantly as he insults Chulho's perceived lack of honor. Chulho feigns a groveling apology as the noble orders him to leave his sight. He is relieved to have offended the commander, knowing it saved him from a dangerous spotlight. The other mercenaries mock him for his short-sighted choice of money over status. Chulho ignores them, knowing that a squire's life is filled with invisible political dangers. The sergeant is secretly pleased that Chulho didn't get promoted over him. The men line up to receive their final pay for the campaign. Chulho waits his turn, still feeling the lingering tension of his encounter with the noble. He is handed a heavy bag containing 108 gold coins for his service. As he holds the gold, memories of the carnage and the people he killed flood back. He contemplates the heavy price of blood money earned in this other dimension. A sudden disorientation hits him as he wonders how long he must live this life. The environment begins to pixelate and dissolve around him. A system message announces that the simulation tutorial has concluded. Penalties are applied to his rewards, leaving him with only a fraction of his earnings. The transportation back to his original dimension begins immediately. Chulho finds himself back on the floor of his messy apartment, gasping for air. He stares at his computer screen, trying to process the impossible events that just occurred. He desperately hopes the entire ordeal was just a vivid, terrifying dream. The memory of being a teenage soldier in a medieval war feels far too detailed to be fake. As he checks his surroundings, he hears a distinct metallic sound on the floor. He spots a foreign object rolling away from his hand. The object stops, revealing a heavy engraved piece of metal. Chulho realizes with horror that he is holding a real gold coin from the simulation. The recruitment website remains open, reminding him that the cost of this job is his very soul. Chulho attempts to exchange the tutorial reward for local currency. He waits as the pawn shop owner evaluates the authenticity of the coin. The shop confirms the value of the rare gold piece. The exchange proves the gold from the other world is genuine. He receives over 1,000 USD, a life-changing amount for his current situation. The money confirms his experience was not a hallucination. He walks through the city, reconciling reality with his recent trauma. The reality of the situation begins to settle in. If the gold is real, then the lives he took were also real. Physical tremors show the psychological impact of his realization. A sudden incoming call interrupts his thoughts. He reacts with shock to the caller's identity. He hesitates before answering the mysterious contact. The caller is identified as SOS, the recruitment site. He realizes the organization is tracking him through his phone. He listens as the representative offers a formal meeting. He answers, seeking answers about his soul and the portal. The representative knows his name and history without prior introduction. He is summoned to a high-rise office building in the city center. The site promises more information regarding his previous dimension hop. He finds the office floor for the job hunting advice office SOS. He selects the 6th floor, proceeding with extreme caution. He questions if entering this contract was his ultimate mistake. The feeling of a demonic pact weighs heavily on him. He prioritizes understanding the truth over his own safety. The elevator arrives, forcing him to focus for the meeting. He is greeted by a remarkably cheerful receptionist. She welcomes him as a recognized member of the site. He confirms he has reached the correct location for SOS. The employee directs him toward the executive meeting room. He recognizes her voice from the earlier phone conversation. He tries to maintain a calm exterior through small talk. He expects something far more sinister based on his recruitment. He briefly wonders about the true nature of these people. His imagination provides more common tropes for demonic entities. The receptionist dismisses his intrusive thoughts with a laugh. He is stunned by her direct response to his unspoken thoughts. He realizes the woman possesses legitimate telepathic abilities. She maintains a friendly but terrifyingly perceptive smile. She assures him the president will clarify the situation. Before he enters, she adds one more piece of personal information. She reveals he was underpaid for the gold coin at the pawn shop. He is horrified that they monitored his private financial transactions. She explains that mind reading is trivial compared to dimensional travel. The total lack of privacy leaves him completely vulnerable. She pushes him into the office to meet the CEO. He comes face to face with the leader of the organization. CEO Woo Sun-hee welcomes him to his new career. Her appearance contrasts with the lethal nature of the job. She acknowledges his surprise with calculated grace. The internal chaos in Chulho's mind is easily monitored by the staff. Sun-hee formally identifies herself as the site administrator. They exchange a formal greeting that seals their connection. He asks point-blank if he truly sold his soul to them. She confirms that his initial assessment was accurate. He demands confirmation that the violence he witnessed was real. She admits that the events occurred exactly as he remembers. She then reveals that the entire war was just a tutorial. He is currently a level-owned employee with limited access. The casual terminology for life and death struggle angers him. He asks why a random person like him was selected. Sun-hee clarifies that their recruitment is never accidental. She recounts his betrayal by a friend and his mounting debt. She mentions his mother's comatose state and the unpaid hospital fees. The company targeted him specifically due to his total desperation. He demands to know what they ultimately want from him. After surviving his first encounter, Chulho finds himself face-to-face with the woman behind the screen. He immediately questions if his family is being used as leverage to force his participation in this dangerous game. Woo Sun-hee tells him to be at ease while they discuss the terms of his employment. She provides a direct guarantee that their organization will not involve or harm his family members. Chulho demands clarity regarding what the agency actually requires of him. Sun-hee explains that for the time being, his only priority is to increase his level. He realizes this means he must return to the hyper-violent fantasy world he just escaped. He notes that the entire system, from missions to tutorials, is framed exactly like a video game. The recruiter admits the game-like interface exists to prevent him from breaking under the guilt of his actions. Chulho is visibly disturbed by the implication that his kills carry actual weight. He summarizes the core loop completing missions in another dimension, results in rewards and growth. Sun-hee confirms his assessment is correct. Chulho acknowledges that the contract he accepted binds him to these specific operational rules. However, he refuses to blindly follow orders without knowing the identity or motives of his contractor. He calls the secrecy of the arrangement unreasonable given the personal risks involved. Sun-hee remains noncommittal, neither confirming nor denying the fairness of the situation. She acknowledges his ability to argue his point effectively. She claims the agency maintains ambiguity specifically to ensure his safety from external threats. Chulho considers whether this explanation is a genuine concern or a manipulation tactic. She dismisses his concerns and pivots back to the mechanics of the work. The process is revealed as avatar possession, allowing users to cross into divergent realities to fulfill client requests. She asks if he truly understands the significance of being a bridge between dimensions. Chulho remains silent as he tries to grasp the sheer scale of the operation. Sun-hee reviews his tutorial results, noting he went beyond survival by looting the castle and earning commander praise. She mentions that his success reflects well on her, as she was the one who signed the contract with the client. Chulho realizes that the characters he interacted with are living, breathing people in their own world. The horrific memory of the soldier he killed resurfaces with a new, terrifying reality. Sun-hee mocks his sudden moral hesitation, calling it a delicate mentality compared to his earlier bravado. She notes that his sensitive mindset is exactly what led him to agree to the contract in the first place. She introduces the primary motivator, the immense wealth waiting for successful mercenaries. Chulho is stunned to learn that each gold coin he collected is worth 1.6 million won. She highlights that depending on the client, one could become a millionaire overnight. Chulho asks the ultimate question, what happens if he dies while possessing an avatar? Sun-hee guarantees that his physical body in this world remains perfectly safe regardless of what happens there. Chulho feels a momentary wave of relief at the low physical stakes for himself. However, she warns him not to treat the avatars as disposable tools for his own amusement. She explains that the avatars are also customers, and ruining their lives would be a breach of professional conduct. Chulho agrees that maintaining the host's life and reputation makes logical sense. She shifts the focus to the actual cost of failing a mission. The biggest drawback is a level-down penalty, which would hinder his career and future earning power. Chulho is surprised that the consequences are purely systematic rather than physical. Sun-hee prepares to deliver a piece of information that will change his entire perspective. She asks him to recall the percentage reward he received from the tutorial mission. Chulho notes it was only 1%, prompting her to ask what would have happened if it were a full 100. He does the math and realizes the payout would have exceeded 100 million won. The high risk of the mission corresponds directly to an incredibly high financial return. She explains that everything is proportional. Higher-level missions offer even more staggering rewards. This is why top-tier mercenaries do everything in their power to avoid losing their levels. The thought of making nearly $86,000 in a single job consumes Chulho's thoughts. He becomes ecstatic, realizing the potential to solve all his family's financial problems instantly. The sheer number repeats in his head, overriding his previous fears of violence and death. He suddenly halts his departure, turning back toward the recruiter with a new resolve. Greed has finally replaced his doubt, and Chulho prepares to fully commit to his new life as a warrior for hire. Chulho Kang takes a moment to process the weight of his recent actions. He realizes that in his desperation for financial stability, he has already crossed a moral line by taking lives. The guilt of prioritizing money over human life begins to weigh heavily on his conscience. His recruiter from the agency SOS intervenes, suggesting that self-hatred is a luxury he cannot afford. She reminds him that his intervention allowed Parsons to survive and return home safely. Chulho remains silent, unable to reconcile the professional results with his personal trauma. The recruiter frames the situation through a lens of modern necessity, where earning capital is the ultimate instinct for survival. In an urban landscape defined by competition, the agency presents its dangerous contracts as a standard career path. She offers him a new campaign, tempting him with another opportunity to secure his future. While she claims he is free to return home, the reality of his family's poverty acts as a silent coercion. Chulho is frustrated by the lack of viable options in his own world. He asks for the details of the next task, resigning himself to the agency's demands. The recruiter smiles, knowing she has successfully secured his services for the next mission. The transition process is physically grueling, as Chulho's consciousness is forcefully shifted across dimensions. He feels the crushing sensation of the transfer as the world around him dissolves into light. Intense dizziness follows, as his senses struggle to adapt to a completely new reality. He opens his eyes to find himself fully armored and standing in a stone corridor. Before he can orient himself, a massive warrior swings a giant axe directly toward him. The heavy blade whistles through the air, carrying enough force to end his journey instantly. Shocked and unprepared, Chulho realizes that this world is just as lethal as the last one. The impact of the heavy strike triggers a violent reaction in the enclosed space of the cave. Chulho is left trembling, certain that he is about to be executed by his new companion. However, the massive man lets out a boisterous laugh instead of finishing him off. The sudden shift from life-threatening danger to laughter leaves Chulho completely bewildered. He wonders what kind of chaotic situation the agency has dropped him into this time. The warrior, boss Sampat, warns him to stay focused because he nearly triggered a lethal trap. Chulho looks down and sees that the axe swing was intended to block a projectile, not strike him. He notices a pressure plate beneath his boot that has been activated. A poisoned arrow lies on the floor, having been deflected just inches from his throat. Sampat explains that in these labyrinths, a single misstep results in an agonizing death. The realization hits Chulho his life was just saved by the very man he thought was attacking him. A group of mercenaries stands ready, revealed to be the support team for his mission. Sampat turns his attention back to the path ahead, seemingly unfazed by the close call. Ironically, Sampat immediately falls victim to another mechanical trap that he failed to notice himself. The group questions the situational awareness of their leader as he lies dazed on the stone floor. Chulho begins to piece together the artificial memories provided by the agency. He understands that he is deep inside a massive labyrinth searching for a specific target. Digital alerts suddenly flash before his eyes, signaling the activation of his mission interface. He sees the name Uriavel Pilshin, realizing this is the identity he must maintain for the duration of the job. The primary objective is to find Leopold, the son of Count Raleigh, who is lost somewhere within the maze. The presence of a status window makes the lethal environment feel strangely like a game mechanic. He curses the recruiter for downplaying the danger, despite the familiar RPG elements. Looking at his reflection, he confirms that while his face is the same, his presence in this world is entirely fabricated. The recruiter's voice echoes in his mind, explaining that he is merely acting in place of the client. Chulho is struck by a sudden, dark realization regarding his new employment. If he wishes to complete the mission and get paid, more bloodshed will be inevitable. He fears that failing to perform the necessary violence will result in his own death and the failure of his mission. He wonders if entering a contract with such a shady organization was his biggest mistake. A vision of his father in the hospital and his sister's distress flashes through his mind. He shakes off the doubt, realizing he has no other way to save them from their current misery. Sampat calls out to him, noticing that Chulho is once again lost in his own thoughts. Chulho's expression hardens as he accepts the brutal necessity of his new career. He announces his readiness to continue, putting aside his hesitation for the sake of the mission. The mercenary group reforms, their collective survival depending on the performance of the client they are protecting. Chulho charges into the heart of the labyrinth, determined to succeed and return home no matter the cost.